at the top of the hour. So welcome, Wisdom's Tribe. Fantastic to have you all back online this morning. Looking forward to the next stage of business shedding. I think it's called now, because we've got 5 stages of business shedding by the president's statement from last night. So I think we're ending stage 5 Friday next week and moving to stage 4. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires from there. But I don't think that should. Yes, Mpho, you wanted to say something?
Just quickly, the opportunities at the moment, I know we've got a topic, but I just want to share. Yesterday, I got a purchase order from one of my big corporate clients to do a massive study. After I approached them with a solution, they weren't specifically looking, but I presented a solution to them and they bought it. And yesterday I got a purchase order number for a really big project. So let's keep pushing. Let's take solutions to clients, because clients are looking. I just wanted to share that quickly.
Absolutely fantastic, Mpho. Thanks for sharing that, and we'd love to dig into that a little bit deeper, and chat about what you're doing and how you're doing it, because I think everybody can potentially learn from everybody else, but specifically from your situation there. So that's great. Well done, and look forward to chatting about that more. So yeah, great. Jasper, Tsello, welcome. Yes, Guy, everybody, well, not everybody on board, but we've got a good group on board. So let's kick off the morning. So over to you, Lee.
Fantastic news, Mpho, and I think it sets the tone for today as well. We have gone through this journey of looking at what kind of mindset, what is it that is going to equip us both internally and in our environment to move forward fruitfully into an unknown future. And we've come across various topics, and one of them has been a role model. And what is it? Who is it that we're looking to, and who from our past has influenced us to give us that self-belief and that trust that we can achieve what we want to achieve. And that's taken us through journeys of listening to people's stories and realizing that there's ups and downs in life, and we can learn from our successes as much as we can from our failures. And yesterday we touched on the fact that it isn't just an individual journey, it is a corporate journey, and that there are systems and systemic successes and failures as well, and that you can very well end up being caught up in a system that you have no control over, and you find yourself at a disadvantage. So I've been thinking along those lines, and that's what prompted me to turn to a book that I read many, many years ago, and that I gave to my oldest daughter, and she's picked it up recently and has really been enjoying it, and we've had some really amazing discussions out of it. And that is called The Art of Possibility by Roz and Ben Zander. Just by show of hands, has anybody read it? Yeah. So just to give you a little bit of a story, Ben Zander is the orchestra, he's the conductor of the Boston Philharmonic Orchestra. Roz is a coach and leadership guru, really. And they put together this book, and it really is rich with stories of Ben's experience of teaching music students and how to get them to get out of their heads and to find the success that they're looking for. And one of their principles, and I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Sorry, I'm getting there. We spoke about, so we started with this yesterday, but the art of possibility. So this has been in Roz Zander's book, and I think in its the title in itself is something that I think we can start dwelling on, is what is possibility, what is the possibility, and what is the creativity that goes into thinking about these possibilities. And one of their principles is, and their book starts with, it's all invented. So if we can, in the paradigms that we live in, the systems that we live in, they were all created at some point in time, and they were all invented. So why don't we invent something that works for us? And so in Ben's practice of teaching students, he found that it wasn't educationally beneficial to give grades, that he wanted to help them to improve and to keep growing rather than judge themselves against somebody else and evaluate whether they were better or worse than somebody else. And he felt that was self-defeating. And so at the beginning of the year, he gave all of the students an A. And now don't misinterpret this. This was not a participation prize. This was not, you're going to get an A just for being here. They still had to earn their A, but they began the year with an A. So it was assumed and presumed that they were going to succeed and they were going to do well. So this cycle of self-fulfilling prophecy was set up front. And so the idea of it was that you weren't, it wasn't something that now, don't misunderstand, it's not so much it was an expectation, but it was this possibility, is that this was something that you could aim for and that you could prove that how you were going to achieve this A. And how they were going to do that is they had to write a letter to Ben. And they had to say, I got my A. So at the beginning of the year, they had to write a letter to Mr. Zander saying, I got my A because. And they would then really create and write a manifesto for themselves that said, this is what I'm going to do in the course of this year to ensure that I retain and keep my A. That principle I felt could move into, and we start with South Africa, but I want to hold on to the fact that it isn't just about, it is about our country, but it starts with us and it starts with local. Stello keeps coming back to local, and I don't want us to forget that. But it may also, having just had the president's speech, and we're all in this together, you know, this, the world, the country is in a process and in an experience that we're all sharing. So, and we are very good as a nation of sort of poking holes in what should happen or shouldn't happen or complaining about this. But what if we gave the country an A? What if we just said, South Africa, you've done it. You've succeeded. You have achieved what you needed to do to manage a health pandemic, to get everybody on board, to restart our economy in new and vital ways, addressing unemployment, addressing education, addressing crime. You've got it. So if we come with that attitude that this is the possibility that we're living into, how are we going to do it? South Africa's already got its A. We believe it. We trust it. What do we need to do in order to make it happen? So that is perhaps a longer introduction than normal, but I wanted to set the scene and for you then just to pick up whatever is of interest to you, whatever has struck you from what I've said, whether it's personal, whether it's in the country, whether it's about getting an A, whether it's self-fulfilling prophecy, whatever sparked for you, I'm inviting you to share.
Right, fantastic, Lee. And just off the top for me, it brings up two thoughts. And the one is you must inspect what you expect, which is the same principle as giving the A up front. So think about what you're expecting and inspect with that intention of actually finding that expectation. And the other is also one that comes from business, from Eli Goldratt, some of you may know. And he said, you know, the results that you get are determined by the measurements you take. So be very careful about what measurements you're taking, and know what the measurements are that you're taking. And I think that applies absolutely in this situation. So what are you measuring? Are you measuring? If you're not measuring, what kind of results are you going to expect from whatever you're doing if you don't know what the results are? So those are my two thoughts off the top of that. So yeah, let's whip around the group. So who'd like to pick up first? Is there anybody with something specific that they want to add in, or should we just go through and give everybody a gap? Okay, so it looks like Herman. Herman, but you never like saying anything. I'm surprised that you're picking up the microphone first. Herman, go for it.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you very much for bringing that up. I enjoyed Sander's book, even though I have a bit of a shadow with regards of what I think of him. I've heard a couple of things where he was actively involved, and I'm not so convinced of the qualities he tries to expose in his own book. But be that as it may, I think the concept has got a lot of value. And you heard me say before that 2,000 years ago, Plutarch said, education is the kindling of a flame and not the filling of a vessel. And 2,000 years later, we're still filling vessels. And the idea was that A is kindling a flame. And that's what education should be about, right from the word go. And to what I really like was your proposal to give us A and A. But then we would have to kind of, this circle, for example, speak in more or less in one voice in order to entice a lot of people to buy into giving us A and A. Otherwise, we just carrying on, this is shit, and look at the president, he's tired, and blah, 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 blah. We've got enough of that. But I think the idea as such has a lot of merit, and I think we should pursue it. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Herman. Right, Grant, I'd love to hear from the educationist amongst us.
Oh, is that me? Okay. Yeah, just thinking about my students when they come in, and especially when I'm teaching statistics, one thing I always say to them is, you're not incapable of learning this subject, and I don't think you're incapable of doing anything. We need two things. We need to not fear failure in doing it, coming back to yesterday's, and we need to want to. And that's a weird one. In matric, I failed accountancy, and now I teach finance at master's level, because in matric I liked alcohol and girls, and then later I learned about business and the need to understand finance. So the belief that you can, or the belief that you, or the want to do something is critical. And I think enough people in this country need to want to see it succeed for it to succeed. Hope that makes sense.
Great, thanks, Grant. I'm a little bit concerned about you giving up girls and alcohol for statistics and accounting. It's a bit of a weird shift, that one. But anyway, good luck with that. And yes, Mpho.
So, Grant, I mean, following on what you're saying, I think also as a teacher myself, every time I teach on programs, I always say it starts with me. So, you know, you've gotten an opportunity to be here, to be on the program. And so what are you going to do about it? It starts with me. So that point of accountability, to say, I'm going to be responsible for this journey. And when I need help, I'm going to ask. Because one of the issues, especially on the GIBS programs that I work on, we have a high fall-off rate. Because, you know, some of the things that we're holding people back is that the programs were run in English, we had big files, we were doing it in lecture halls, all those things were intimidating. People felt a little bit stupid and in over their heads. And we didn't really create an environment where people could say, actually, I'm struggling. Actually, I don't understand what's going on. So two things, the accountability and the ability to say, I need help. I found that to be very useful in the way that I teach.
Great, thanks for some great points there. Leighton, I'd love to come across to you on this.
I have to warn you that I have had coffee this morning, so that could be even worse than yesterday. You know, I've loved what Lee had to suggest and put forward there, and concur with some of the thoughts that are flying around. There is no question that the positivity in that message that we've got an A and how to progress from that is absolutely vital and respected. I think going back to the local conversation at a national level, and I think that's part of what's happening with what we're hearing right now, is that they're starting to devolve away from centrality towards where there's more autonomy in provinces to make decisions. There's stages to be milestones, et cetera, and I think from my perspective, the places where I've really learned is when I've engaged on a local basis, and I've actually been involved in an iterative process. It's in the doing that one really learns. And it's not entirely on subject there in terms of where Lee was going to, but it's all well and good to talk, and talking is fantastic, and talking on fireplaces or kitchen tables or wherever else we're allowed to talk, or we can talk, is absolutely vital. But my sense is that the doing is where one really learns. When one signed up as a student or apprentice to Michelangelo or Da Vinci, one was working with a master, and one learned from the master by osmosis, by being in the presence of that knowledge and sharing in that knowledge. And implicit in the master-apprentice relationship was a flow, a two-way flow. And that's really the essence for me, is to be with people who are masterful. And there's some real masters in this group. There's some real knowledge in this group, some lovely wisdoms. And I would love to do something with some of those people, because that's really how I'm going to learn. And if I'm able to learn, I can then repeat it, and other people can learn with me. And that's I believe, how you multiply. So just some thoughts. Thank you for that.
Fantastic, Leighton. Absolutely agree with that. And often one learns the most when you're teaching as well. So I think there's two elements to that for me. The one is exactly that. You learn by teaching, but the other is you also learn by listening. Nobody learns anything when they're talking. So you can only learn when you're listening to someone else. So those are very good principles I enjoy as well. So Steve, love to come across to you on this.
Thanks, Ivan. Just trying to pick up on a couple of the threads that have been raised so far. I work a lot with teenagers and young adults, either from a therapeutic perspective or coaching. And look, the millennial mindset is something that has been written about a lot. See Leighton laughing there. But I find it so true. And for me, it just points to a lot of our early childhood development and our primary school, even into teenage years, in which young people are not being allowed enough space to employ their own abilities and to fail. And so if I pick up on what Lee said in terms of being given an A, a number of young people I work with have been given an A since birth, but they've also been told that they're never going to lose that A. And I think that is a crucial space that people are not realizing, especially young people, and they're coming through and entering the workforce. And so they have this mindset of, actually, doesn't matter what I do or where I go, everything will still be fine. And I think that's something that young people need a lot of help with, and even some adults that I've worked with, around then being able to do things for themselves, to be able to think for themselves and then be able to do things for themselves. And part of that is just taking on responsibility for actions, consequences to actions, etc. I was listening to, some of you might be familiar with the Canadian clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson. And in response to a question posed to him by a young person, what do young people do to solve climate change? He said, well, you need to learn to make your bed. You need to learn to tidy your own room. You need to learn to do your own studies. Because if you can't solve things in your immediate environment, what on earth thinks that you've got the ability to get out there and solve the world's problems? And so I think a lot of that has to do with the mindset to embrace that A, but understand also that it's hard work to keep it. And it does start with the individual to keep pursuing that. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Steve. I'd love to pop across to Zane on this one. Zane, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's been discussed so far.
Morning, everyone. I like the points that have shared, have been shared thus far, and I agree with a lot of them. I mean, looking at what's going to happen over the next few months, given the new outlook on business.
Sorry, Zane, I'm just going to stop you for a sec there. Your sound is breaking up quite badly. So what I'm going to do is ask everyone just to switch off their videos for the moment, and let's see if that just improves the quality of the sound. So just hang on one sec. Okay, Zane, go ahead. Let's try now.
All right. Can you hear me?
That's much better. Yeah, that's great.
All right. Yeah. I mean, the new. I mean, the face of business is going to change rapidly over the course of the next few months, and I think it's time that we do bring those. I mean, the masters that we have within the industry, and we all adapt and become teachable to each one's craft, because I mean I do believe that's the only way we probably get through a time and situation such as this. And yeah, that's it for me.
Great, thanks, Zane. Appreciate that. Cello, I'd love to come to you on this one.
Morning, everybody. I'm just thinking, in adding on to what some of the guys were saying, when you are in a teaching space, you know, there's a real need to allow the student to be wrong or to fail or to, you know, I really like, I'm charmed by the concept of giving out an A, you know, beforehand. I didn't know about this book. I'm going to check it out. For me, it's always helped that when I'm faced with a group, the first thing that I let them know is that, guys, I would have passed maths much better at school if I was told why I was studying maths. So what I will do my best is to make sure that I tell you why you are learning the concepts that you are learning, and you can immediately think about how they will apply. That's why I try to immediately start to remove that fear of failure, because with that fear of failure, then it doesn't really allow guys to even think and to explore and to be wrong, to raise your hand and be wrong. You know, guys are very afraid to be wrong. They are very afraid to fail. So for me, that's what has worked in trying to say to them, the subject matter is not even a wrong or right subject matter. I need your opinion. Innovation needs your opinion. You're not going to be wrong. It's just how you see things. So you are very right when with the guys that were speaking about teaching, when they say, you know, with teaching groups, you have to get them to transcend that failure part, even as they come in. You know, it's very important for them as they start, they already feel like, okay, I can do this because my opinion matters. So that's why it all kind of boils down to. I think I'll just pack it from there for now. Great conversation, and thanks a lot for sharing.
Great, thanks, Stella. And yeah, Nozipa, I'd love to come across to you. You're new to us this morning, so welcome on board. I'd love to hear how you got to join us and what your thoughts are on the discussion so far.
Thank you, thanks. I joined you through an invitation from Mpho. I think I'd like to just pick up from Lee's introduction, which I found quite interesting, the getting an A or giving an A. What for me stands out, I'm in the training field, and one of the trainings I work on, it's an UNCTAD program called EmpriTech. One of the things we train on that program is it's entrepreneurial competencies, and this is based on the internal locus of control. And so when Lee talks about the part where I got an A because, that to me ties it back to the internal locus of control, in that when you give students the opportunity to say why they got an A, this is then you saying they need to go back to themselves and say, this is what I did to get an A. So that for me, I find interesting. And I think it's something that we can carry right through to ourselves as well, to say it's not just that things are being done or being given to us, we are getting them because this is what I did in order for me to be able to get there. So thanks. It's a great conversation. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Nzipho, and welcome on board again. Cecile, I'd love to come to you on this one.
I read a quote yesterday that says, what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make in the world. So I think after Cyril's speech maybe last night, all of us have to decide that. That's all I want to say on that today.
Okay, thanks, Cecile. Short and sweet this morning. Trevor.
Oops, you caught me typing. In the little message, I've said what stimulated in my mind from this discussion is manifesto, and not in a political sense, but a project manifesto or a regional or national manifesto, and then the persistence and stick-to-itiveness that's yeah, I think it's persistence. You've got to stick to it. If you're going to decide on a manifesto, then you work that manifesto, and then you've got to bring in all the who's accountable for it, what are the consequences, who's responsible, where are the rewards for actually making this thing work. I think you've got to build all that into the particular objectives around what you're talking about here. You can achieve anything out there. The possibilities are endless, but you actually have to have framed it. And I believe, and I've said here, this to me is an advance investment on you earning the right to that A at the end of a particular time period. And what's not in discussion here is, what if you don't earn that right at the end of the 12 months? What then? Again, so then I think you should get a fail. But I don't want to talk failure. I'll give you a learning experience, Ellie, but you're not going to get an A. Okay, I'm stirring like.
Yeah, great, thanks, Trevor. Stella, let's come to you.
Okay, morning everybody. So what triggered my mind was when talking about the A. A couple of months ago, I watched a video on an experiment that was done in the 80s in America, where the school teacher told the class, she divided the class, just quickly, briefly, she divided the class between blue-eyed children and brown-eyed children, and told the brown-eyed children that they are lazy, they're stupid, they can't do anything, and she just told the blue-eyed kids all positive things. So to cut a long story short, they did a numerical test, some tests, and the brown-eyed kids failed, their marks just went down. And then a couple of days, she said, no, she made a mistake and she reversed it. And then the opposite happened. You know, the same thing happened where the brown-eyed kids now outperform the blue-eyed kids. So, and I think that just brings my mind back to, you know, early childhood development, where we need to start, what's so important is for kids to give positive encouragement, and to, I think what I'm trying to say is, you get from people what you expect from them. If we expect failure and mistakes, you're going to get that. But if you encourage people and your expectations are high, people are going to try and live up to that. That's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Stella. Solomon.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're with us. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. So I think I'm excited about that the first statement that says, what if we gave the country an A in addressing the the issues. I guess to me, this is stirring up two things. And the first one is, in light of all the solutions that are on the table that the government is putting for us, I think from my side, my first thing is, what is my attitude as an individual in terms of my response? There's a principle that says you eat the meat and throw out the bones. So there might be some of the things that maybe I don't like about what the president is saying, but there might be stuff that are great that needs to be implemented. So my attitude in that, what is it that I'm responsible in making sure that I'm actually helping for everything to move forward? But the second thing, it's leadership. Where I am right now, I'm working as part of the trustees in a place where I'm staying, where people ignore a lot of the rules and policies that they've placed in the complex. So my attitude, I mean, my leadership role is to influence everybody else to actually faithfully now begin to adhere to a lot of the rules that are in the complex, because this is where everybody is right now. So if we can take responsibility of all the things that we are doing where we are, how much more can we take responsibility of all the things that now the country is wanting to do, you know? So yeah, that's my point.
Great, thanks, Solomon. And just an interesting thought came to me while you were talking there is, you know, if you treat the bones properly, you can actually produce some wonderful complements to your meat as well. So don't always just think about throwing out the bones. You know, there might be some added value that one can gain from that side of things as well. So just a thought there, Guy. Your mic's off, Guy. Guy, your mic's off.
You caught me off guard, no problem. Ivan, a quick one. Yeah, I think we are all achieving an A in our environment here today on these sort of platforms. And so it's important to go to different platforms to get different input or different A's, so we can actually see how we can, first of all, without being too selfish, help ourselves, and then help those people that are on the platforms who you can identify with and be able to communicate with and find some sort of common bond. So very good discussion. And once again, I wanted to be a listener, but had to say 30-second word. Thank you.
Right, thanks, Guy. Jasper.
I think it was a very valuable discussion, and for me, it's almost a question. You will not achieve the A for South Africa if we don't bring a whole lot of things into alignment. And the alignment starts with at individual level. So if the individual level feels that this thing is serving my needs, then the next level up is the family. And the family will then make sure that the environment within their community is conducive for that family, which will lead to a better community, which will eventually lead to a better South Africa. So in that equation, there's a whole lot of variables that would need to be addressed to see what then is the common thread or the common bond within that equation, that if we can work on that, we can get that right and everybody buys into it. I think there's definitely the potential and the resources within our country to quickly solve our problems once we can get everything aligned.
Great, thanks, Jasper. Ian, over to you.
Yeah, no, I have nothing to add to it. It's been a very interesting conversation. So yeah, I'm just internalizing what people are saying, but no comment.
Great, thanks, Ian. Pierre, I don't think we gave you a chance. Is there anything you would like to add before I switch back to Lee? And then I think we'll wrap up for this morning.
No, I'm fine. Thanks for now.
Great, thanks, Pierre. Lee, back to you.
thanks everyone. I think two things remain with me, and because I've sort of started thinking about this yesterday, I know certainly for myself, at the beginning of the year, I dutifully think about the year ahead, and I set my goals, and I decide, you know, what is my strategy for the year, and of course that's all out the window. Life has changed so much, and this idea of writing a letter to myself, so thinking of 12 months ahead, and dear Lee, you've got an A because, and to write that letter to myself to say, what is it that I actually want to, how will I earn? How will I be responsible? What would I do? What do I need to do in order to live into the possibility and the reality of this A that is true for me and that is going to make a difference in the society and community in which I live? So that's sort of a challenge that I'd like to put out to you, is to also start thinking about yourself, because as we've been chatting, this idea of individual responsibility, coming back to, and Nozipho said, this internal locus of control, that what can I control in an uncontrollable environment? Myself. And part of that is our attitude, and Stella raised it so clearly, this, what we get what we expect. Ivan emphasized that as well, in terms of measurement. So if we're measuring what we want, and if we have this idea that we already have this expectation of achieving what we believe we're going to do, we're already setting ourselves up for success. And it comes back to the value of this group and the value of these kinds of conversations. And Leighton's question about doing, what are we doing to enable the success, enable South Africa to get the A that we believe it should have, and that we putting as that we're already giving, that expectation is already there, or that possibility is already there. And that mindset and consciousness and individual attitude is really the starting place. And for me, this is where I'm starting to feel that attitude is being encouraged and developed and supported. And so for me, this is a platform of doing in order to get the mindset to achieve that A, or to keep that A. So those are the thoughts that are mulling around in my mind as trying to bring the bits and pieces that have been shared today together. So thanks everybody, really appreciate that. Stella, I wonder whether we can put eyes on you tomorrow. I'm deeping again, so throwing you in the deep end, but wondering whether it's time for us to listen to another story, because I think stories, and Nozipho, you are new to our group. Solomon, maybe, I'm not sure how long you've been in Paul, but one of the things that we believe is a rich investment in who we are as individuals and as a group is to understand who we are as people. And so just listen to people's stories and finding out what can we learn, how can we grow just from listening to someone else. Stella, would you be open to sharing your story tomorrow? Fantastic, fantastic. So thanks everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.
Great, fantastic. Thanks everyone. Have a great day. See you in the morning, 8 o'clock. Go well.